in some sort of creative spirit. And then I lost that at about 15 or 16 when I understood about evolution.
You released your first big bestseller was the book called The Selfish Gene, which you released in the 1970s. When you released that in the 70s, I think the zeitgeist at the time in the Western world anyway was that religion was dying. It was on its way out. Did you think that religion would be on its way out by now? Where did you think religion would be now, thinking back then?
I'm not sure that I ever really picked up that zeitgeist of it being on its way out. I don't remember thinking consciously one way or the other, really.
Maybe I'm more impressed by what journalists wrote in magazines at the time rather than expressing the zeitgeist.
Well, maybe, I'm not sure about whether they wrote it at the time or whether they write it now, rather gleefully maintaining that the alleged prophecy of the 1970s hasn't been fulfilled. I don't ever remember making that prophecy.
The existence of altruism causes a lot of debate with other scientists, evolutionary scientists. What place do you think altruism has in the world of the selfish gene? Why do people help each other, even when it costs them to do so?
The selfish gene is largely about altruism, actually. And the point about the book, where it's relevant to altruism, is that altruism among individuals results from selfishness among genes. Selfishness among genes kind of is deeply bedded in the Darwinian idea, in the modern version, the neo-Darwinian idea. Neo-Darwinism is evolution by the differential survival of genes in gene pools. Those genes that survive in gene pools are the ones that have what it takes to survive, and that pretty much means being selfish, being, trampling over the other ones, put it in crude terms. But that doesn't mean that individuals trample over each other necessarily. You can get altruistic individuals. There are several ways of getting altruistic individuals from selfish genes. And in the book, The Selfish Gene, I discussed two main ones. Kin effect, because statistically close kin tend to share the same genes, and so for individuals to be good to their kin is a way of favouring their own genes, and that's one. And the other one that I discussed in that book was reciprocal altruism. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And both those two are powerful effects, both of them theoretically sound, and there's good evidence for both of them. Humans are a bit strange because we are obviously, we harbour altruistic feelings towards people who are neither our kin nor are in a position to repay the favour. We have a strong psychological predisposition to be nice, to be sympathetic, to be compassionate, to be generous. And, by the way, I meet that in Australia more than anywhere else in the world.
Nice. Nice to hear you say that. You probably go down here a bit better here than you do in the United States, as I suspect.
No, I wouldn't wish to decry the reception I receive in the United States either. But there is something about humans that seems to suggest that we go beyond what we strictly should from a selfish gene point of view, from a Darwinian point of view. And I think you could think of it from a Darwinian point of view as a kind of mistake. I mean, after all, the rule of thumb that's built into our brains by natural selection for kinship effects and for reciprocation effects, it's not going to be a cognitive look out for your kin and make sure they work out whether they really are your kin. It's nothing like that. It's much more a rule of thumb that says, if, for example, our ancestors lived in small villages where the majority of people you ever met were likely to be your kin, statistically likely to be your kin, then automatically the rule of thumb would be nice to everyone you meet. Be nice to everyone you know. Be nice to everyone that you encounter in the village street. That's the rule of thumb, and that's the rule of thumb that will still be within us, even though we now live in large cities where you don't meet kin all the time. You perhaps almost never meet kin. You don't meet people who are in a position to reciprocate either. Nevertheless, the rule of thumb's there. It's like sexual lust, where obviously the biological significance of sexual lust is reproduction. But when we're using a contraceptive, we still don't lose the lust. I mean, it's still there. The rule of thumb is there. Similarly, the equivalent of contraception is moving into a big city where you're no longer surrounded by kin and no longer surrounded by potential reciprocators. That doesn't remove the lust to be nice and to be kind and to be compassionate and to be generous.
Seeing that way then, it's rather hard for people to hear this, but do you think then love is a kind of mere byproduct of the evolutionary engine?
I hate the word mere. I mean,
well, okay, I'll take the word mere away then. So
yeah.
love is a byproduct then of this evolutionary engine.
Yes, but it's a wonderful byproduct. It's a grand and beautiful byproduct. I wouldn't be without it.
I'm going to move from love to viruses now, if that's okay. Seems a strange little quantum leap to make there. You see beauty in a virus in a way in the book. I'm persuaded to see it too after having read it. I may feel different if I have a cold, but viruses are incredibly elegant things in their own way. When I was brought up in school, I was told rightly or wrongly by my biology teacher that, this is the 1970s I'm talking about, we're not sure whether we can really call a virus an organism. How is that decided these days? Can we call them organisms or not?
Well, I think that's a rather semantic issue. I mean, if you look at the world from the point of view of the selfish gene, the whole of life, everything about life is about DNA striving and struggling to replicate itself. And this is an automatic process. It happens simply because those variants of DNA that, as a matter of fact, turn out to be good at propagating themselves are the ones we see. So the world automatically becomes filled with DNA that's good at propagating itself. Now, if you look at an animal, like a lion or a kangaroo or something, this is a vast, great machine which is there in the world to propagate the DNA that made it. It's an elaborate computer program written by the DNA, and the end product of the computer program is make more DNA like me.
It's a gigantic shop front, essentially.
It's a shop front for DNA.
A shop front for DNA.
That's right. And so it's DNA making copies of DNA, a program making a copy of a program, by virtue of an amazingly big and elaborate digression, which is a kangaroo. It's a digression. Kangaroo DNA makes more kangaroo DNA, and the route by which it does it is this astonishing leaping machine whose purpose is to make more DNA of the kind that made the original leaping machine. Now, that's one way of doing it, and that's the way kangaroo DNA does it, that's the way human DNA does it. Virus DNA has discovered a shortcut. Virus DNA just does it by more or less directly making more virus DNA, injecting itself into cells of other creatures, whether humans or kangaroos or bacteria. And the virus DNA is still saying make more copies of me, of the virus DNA. But it's parasitizing, it's taking advantage of the machinery which is already there. Now, when your school teacher said he wasn't sure whether to call a virus an organism or not, the reason for that is that the organism part is provided by the host, by the cells of the host. It's what the virus is mostly just the instructions for hijacking the organism machinery. It's information, programmed information, which has seized the controls of another organism. Now, the viruses have to have a certain amount of extra machinery to do it. They have to have a coat of protein at very least, or in some cases they have injection machinery so that the DNA can be injected.
You want like a little lunar lander with a needle under it.
That's right. There's one. I think it parasitizes bacteria, and so the little lunar lander, which is put together by elegant rules that are understood biochemically. It looks like a little lunar lander. It lands on the surface of the bacterium. It's tiny compared to the bacterium. It looks like a lunar lander landing on this surface of the bacterial cell, and then it sticks a probe through the cell wall and pumps virus DNA into the bacterium. The virus DNA is then, I mean, as far as the bacterial machinery is concerned, it can't tell the difference between bacterial DNA and virus DNA. It's all just DNA.
So it's like new instructions have arrived.
New instructions have arrived. It's precisely like taking a computer program and copying and pasting a stretch of program into a crucial place in the program, and then the program starts doing something different. It starts manufacturing more viruses, having been hijacked away from its previous task of manufacturing more bacteria.
Richard Dawkins is my guest in conversation today. Richard, let's talk about the effect of culture, human culture, on our own evolution as a species. Is culture something that gets in the way of our ongoing evolution? Like human culture allows us to cultivate land, to produce things so we can make coats to keep us warm. We have political systems that ideally will protect the sick and the weak and the vulnerable and the disabled. Is there any evidence or suggestion to your mind that our culture is actually impeding our evolutionary growth as a species?
I think the effect is going to be complex. It may impede it in some respects because our culture may protect us and shield us from the need to be good at surviving in ways that our ancestors did by running fast and being good at hunting and things like that. On the other hand, what culture does is to provide a whole new environment in which natural selection may be going on. And if you look at the differences between different human peoples, they are quite different, and not only in ways that are caused by the weather, like the difference between the Inuit in the Arctic and, say, the Dinka in Sudan. The culture also provides important differences in diet, for example. Those tribes of people who historically have been herders and have drunk milk as adults are able to deal with milk genetically.
Yeah, we've evolved, haven't we?
We've evolved but milk is primitively an infant food, and it's not good for adults. And there are many peoples in the world, for example, many Oriental peoples and many African tribes as well, who lose the ability to digest milk at the age of about 4.
And that's a natural thing. That's what we were all like.
That's what we were all like. And then those of us whose ancestors were herders who drank, they gradually pushed the age at which you could go on drinking milk later and later. And this was a genetic change, a naturally selected genetic change, that we postponed the moment at which we were unable to, at which we ceased to be able to digest milk. And the biochemistry of this is well understood. And so that's just one famous example of culture affecting genetic evolution. It's called gene-culture coevolution.
The existence of pain and suffering has troubled theologians and religious people for millennia. It troubles you to some degree as well, doesn't it? The issue of why we, not so much why we have pain. We know why we have pain. It's so we don't go and get ourselves cut to bits all the time. But why so much pain?
Yes.